Welcome to the Nonprofit Voice, a podcast series brought to you by NonProfit Pro, the go-to resource for nonprofit management and strategy. In each episode, we're going to sit down with leaders of nonprofit organizations, the people responsible for paving the way for our sector, along with key technology strategy partners who are transforming our industry. Here at the Nonprofit Voice, we'll have refreshing conversations in which we will all learn more about the convergence of nonprofit and technology. Be sure to follow us on social media and visit our website to find more episodes of the Nonprofit Voice. And you can download all of the Nonprofit Voice episodes on iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify. We will have all the links down below. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Nonprofit Voice. I'm Nhu Te, Editor-in-Chief of NonProfit Pro, and I'll be your host for today's episode. And as always, thank you so much for joining us today. So today we're going to be diving into multi-channel fundraising strategies. Particularly, we're going to chat about the big challenges, picking the right channels, messaging tactics, integration, and of course, adapting to our new environment in light of COVID-19. So without further ado, I'm super delighted to introduce the guest joining me on today's episode. So please join me in welcoming Jennifer Roberti, CMO of Save the Children, and Justin McCord, VP of SMarketing at RKD Group. Welcome, you two. How are you guys doing?
I'm great, Nhu. How are you doing?
Doing very well. Trying to stay cool in the summer heat.
I think it's hot everywhere right now for folks, but Nhu, we're all happy to be inside and somewhat air conditioned, or at least out of the sun, to have this chat.
Awesome. All right, so before we actually jump into today's topic, I want to get to know you guys and let our audience get to know you guys a little bit more. So Jennifer, I'm going to start with you. Can you share your background and how you found yourself at Save the Children, and of course, more about the organization?
Great, thank you, Nhu. I guess I would probably consider myself a classical brand marketer by background. I spent the first half of my career on Madison Avenue working at a large advertising agency and a lot of different global brands, and took a major directional change about 15 years ago, and I moved to South Africa and went to work for an up-and-coming mobile operator, and I got to see that grow from 16 million subscribers in 6 countries to 230 million subscribers in 22 countries over the next 11 years. Also got to really see how mobile and introduction of mobile and data changed developing markets across Africa and the Middle East, things like mobile money, and then came back to the States and was looking for an opportunity that would combine my passion for marketing and my passion for development, and ended up as the Chief Marketing Officer at UNICEF USA, where I was there for 2 years, and then I've been at Save the Children and as their CMO for about just a little bit over 2 years. Save the Children is an awesome organization. We've been around for over 100 years. We just had our centennial last year. It was founded by Eglantine Jebb in post-World War I. And currently, Save the Children US operates here in the US domestically, mostly in the South, but also in Washington State and California with domestic programs in Head Start and early education, as well as in over 100 countries around the world through Save the Children Federation.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that story. It's incredible. Justin, let's hear you.
Well, Nhu, it's great to be with you and Jennifer on this episode. So I am in my 9th year with RKD Group, and RKD Group is a data-driven omni-channel agency, and we work with nonprofits of all shapes and sizes to help them better connect with people and with donors who are looking to make the world more humane, just, and compassionate. Organizations just like Save the Children, as a matter of fact. So, and so I'm in my 9th year with the organization. I spent the first part of my career in sports marketing in baseball as well as soccer, and then felt called into working alongside nonprofits with the opportunity to help them grow and bring some commercial marketing tactics from the emerging sports marketplace into nonprofits. Have spent time as a digital strategist for integrated plans and integrated organizations, and then moved over into my current role a handful of years ago, where I help RKD Group as a whole tell our story, understand what's happening in the marketplace, and then communicate out what we're seeing and what's helping people stay out in front and stay connected to donors.
Awesome. And before we move on, I did want to dial it back and talk about your role of SMarketing. Can you explain that a little bit?
I certainly can. So it's fitting, Nhu, that you would ask us to participate in a chat about integration, and that's because even my title is somewhat of an integration. Jennifer described herself as a classic brand marketer. I'm going to draw off of my sports background, and I'm more of a point forward, which is a combination of two roles on a basketball court that are smushed together at times, where you have a big player dribbling the ball up the court, and have always been a tweener, somewhere in between the marketing and the communication side, or somewhere in between direct response and brand marketing. And SMarketing, my team at RKD Group, we are the intersection between sales and marketing. And while at some organizations those two aspects can be siloed, we are intentional in integrating those together, because we have to learn what's happening in the marketplace and respond to it in a very integrated way. And it's no different from, I think, where maybe some of our chat's going to go around the integration of fundraising and marketing with how nonprofits go to market now.
Awesome. I love that. All right, so let's dive in. Jennifer, I'd love for you to kick us off. What are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to multi-channel fundraising? And with that, are there any misconceptions that you've heard over the years?
Thanks, Nhu. Multi-channel marketing, in fundraising especially, I think is really, really challenging. I've worked with a lot of classic marketers who have entered the fundraising space, myself being one of them. And I think you naturally assume that, there's a lot that's similar, and there is, but there's actually a lot that's really complex. It's not a blunt instrument, I think, for sure. So I view my job, Justin talked about basketball. I view my job as kind of sitting there pulling a lot of different levers all the time, because multi-channel marketing fundraising means that you're looking at all of these pieces and trying to move the levers around constantly based on what you're seeing, what you're hearing from your supporters. And those levers are things like, well, how much is this channel costing me? How efficient is this channel? It's also things like, what's the tenure of this channel? So I might get someone who wants to become a supporter, and it's very efficient from a cost perspective, but they may be less likely to stay with you. You also look at things like, and I think where this is the integration with brand and fundraising come in, at the one-to-many versus one-to-one types of channels. So are there opportunities to get your message out to lots of folks? So there's always a use for things like direct mail or canvassing, but some of the channels like DRTV or radio give you an opportunity to get your brand and your message out to a lot of different folks simultaneously. So you're always looking at all of those things at the same time. How am I driving my brand? How am I growing it? How am I growing my supporter file? Am I doing it in an efficient way? Am I using my donor funds wisely and my organization's funds wisely? And am I attracting and then keeping supporters with us and our organization over a long period of time? And those require looking at channels all the time in different ways.
Jennifer, I think that you've hit the nail on the head, in that it's about looking at it. And too often folks will look at one side and then turn and look at the other. And the true need is to unsilo your data so that you can look at your data, not look at a channel and just rely on the learnings for channels. I think that siloed data may be the number one challenge for organizations. And from that, we develop habits and tendencies and build workflows and processes that build on top of those silos at times. And so, if you don't pull your data together, it's really complicated to pull your channels together. And then it becomes even more complicated to pull your strategy together. So having a data-informed strategy at the beginning, helps create a better data experience, therefore a better planning experience, and ideally a better analytical experience, as Jennifer was saying, so that you can truly see what's happening across multiple channels, but for your various audiences, and grow and build off of that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you and Justin, you and Jennifer both talked about, ensuring that you're picking the right channels. So when it comes to diving into multi-channel fundraising, what's your advice for nonprofits on picking the right channels?
Well, you can't just have a draft. You can't just line them up and arbitrarily select. I do think it's incredibly important to use history as a guide. It's not always the guide, but it can be a guide. So, if you have decades of experience in direct mail fundraising, that has to be a guide as a part of your channel mix and selection. So you can't just throw out your direct mail data, but so it's got to be informed by your history, or informed by what data you have. But then you've got to build off of that historical data to understand from a forecasting perspective what levers, as Jennifer said, you can and want to pull. So taking your data and matching it up to your goals, and then informing yourself in between, well, what are the milestones that I need to get to? I think that's the key to channel mix. The complicated side of that answer is attribution modeling. The simple side of the answer is strategic planning, and somewhere in between is a data-informed model that allows you to identify and grow your channels together, which should in turn inform how your teams come together.
I couldn't agree more, Justin. I think the thing that I might add to that is, I think for us and where we try to start, it's always hard. I don't know that we're always as good at it as we should be, is really start with our strategy and our objectives, because I think we all get sucked into, should we do this? Should we go with this channel or that channel? And it goes back to all the different levers that different channels pull, and being really clear with the team and with your leadership and your board about what's the strategy that you're driving, and then what channels are going to help you get there. So an example might be, if you're in a phase where you've agreed that you'd like to drive more growth, you'd like to really grow your supporter file, you're going to probably want to look at some channels that are going to drive that growth. So you're going to get volume of supporters, maybe at a lower price point, maybe at a lower donation amount. And then you might be in a strategic phase where you're looking at, how do I drive net revenue contribution to my bottom line? And then you might look at things a little bit different. So we always start our budget season looking at what is our strategy as an organization in terms of reaching the American public, get buy-in from our leadership and from our board about the direction that we're taking and what are the trade-offs of that direction, and then we kind of look at our channel mix.
I think that's, Jennifer, that strategy piece I think is super critical for nonprofits to consider, especially when looking at a bunch of channels. But with that, messaging is key for each channel. So can you kind of talk about the differences in messaging when you're talking about different channels, for example, direct mail versus email, or social media versus email?
Yeah, I'm happy to go, Justin. Unless you want to hop in, feel free. So I think message is important, but again, I'd probably just maybe take one step back and talk about audience and data first. So supporter and data. So, I mean, obviously we're all looking to be smarter and use our data around our supporters better. So you really, really want to get to a place where you understand who your supporter is, what they're interested in, and then therefore then think about what's the right message and the right channel to reach them through. So if you think about each channel as sort of a monolithic, here's one message, here's one segment, as a lot of us do, because we don't have the kind of data analytics skills that we're all desperately looking for, you're probably not going to be as effective as you want to be. So I think that's really what we're trying to do, is always think about who we're trying to reach, what are they interested in. It's not about us selling someone something. It's about us understanding what someone's interested in and talking to them about our role and how it relates to that interest.
Yeah,
I don't know if that resonates. Sorry, Justin. I don't know if that resonates with you.
It completely resonates with me, Jennifer. It's this message and audience and channel are interconnected. They have to be for us to be successful. The more successful we are at knowing our audiences, the better we'll be at designing experiences to connect with them. And you know, it's no different that if we think about our own individual lives, there are friends and colleagues that we communicate with through email, and there's a way in which we connect with those people. There are also those that we communicate with through text, and there's a different way that we communicate those. So you have to know your audience and know who you're talking to, so that way you can know the right way to say it, and then have this filter of what's appropriate for the channel in terms of how to say something. And Jennifer, I feel like we keep coming back to strategic planning. Like, be strategic. That's the answer to each one of these things. But it's a complex set of levers that we're constantly pulling and using in order for something to truly be integrated.
You know, Nhu, you brought up a little bit ago about misconceptions. I think it was around channels. But I think it would be great to maybe just take a minute and talk about misconceptions as it relates to messaging and channels for a second. One of the things that I think is the biggest challenge for our sector today, and one of the things that we are all grappling with, is the belief in some places that there's a certain formula to messaging and to effective messaging, especially when you look at things like DRTV spots. And I know that Save the Children is committed, as a lot of other organizations. How do we change that dynamic? I mean, how do we put forth compelling messages that are not exploitative? I guess, just to state it right out there. So I know there are some folks that will tell you that there is a formula to making messaging effective for fundraising. And I really think we need to challenge ourselves to rethink that.
Jennifer, I think now is the time that we can challenge ourselves on a lot of areas, right? Just in the current context of us trying to figure out what that next normal looks like. And I agree with you that that as rapidly as we're changing as consumers, we're also changing as donors. And so amidst the uncertainty, now's a time that we can transform and help change the way that we think or the way that we communicate our messages, so that we can better connect with and grow our causes.
Absolutely. And I just want to clarify what I just said. And I'm saying that humbly from the point of view that we at Save the Children haven't gotten it right. But we're committed to really looking at it and figuring out how do we get better.
No, Jennifer, I think that's a great point that you brought up, that it's not formulaic. It shouldn't be formulaic, right? Because every donor is different, every supporter is different, and they evolve over time. So as an organization, we need to evolve too. But I kind of want to also talk about testing. Justin, maybe with your experience, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. You know, testing campaigns is super critical. So can you share some pointers on how to effectively test messaging?
Absolutely, Nhu. I think that it's, the direct marketing side of me, like many of your listeners are going to be testing addicts. And, you know, the pursuit of what's the optimized message or the most optimal right now, and now what's it, and then do we go back and retest it, and that cycle. And I just think that it's so important when we look at and consider testing, certainly in today's climate, that we make sure that we're avoiding poor test design, that we make sure that we're avoiding tests that we know what the outcome might be, and that we have the data to support whatever test recommendations that we have, that we've got, an outline on the rationale, that we have identified and communicated and broken down the silos with our team to understand what's the time for the test to mature, what's the statistical confidence that we need, and how are we going to determine a gain. A lot of times, if you map that out up front, you're going to be in a much better place with how your tests play out. They're so important, and more and more as we commit resources towards something like that, we can't do it frivolously. We have to do it with intent, and we have to do it with a really solid plan and mutual understanding around it.
Yeah, it's really good advice. Jennifer, I mean, what's the experience and strategy at Save the Children?
I'm probably going to date myself. I think I'm the oldest one here. So, I think that the pendulum has swung a little bit too far in terms of A/B testing and following your testing out the window, as it were. I think that there's got to be a really thoughtful balance between understanding your supporter, understanding what your brand stands for and what you want it to stand for, and understand your messaging. And let's not get to a place where we discount our own supporter understanding and centricity with A/B testing. So I think we've lost a little bit of creativity and innovation by relying on A/B testing, optimizing our way into a solution in some cases. So I kind of like to look at both sides of the coin and make a call. So I think you need to look at both.
Awesome. So, I mean, Justin, I'm going to bring it back to what you said earlier in the beginning of the podcast about integration. Talk about why it's so critical for nonprofits to integrate departments, fundraising and marketing, and, the benefits of it.
Well, I think for some organizations, for some nonprofits, it's an organizational design question, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about organizational design. So I've been able to work with incredible nonprofits where we're bound and determined to better integrate, and ultimately that boils down to better communication between teams, right? So a lot of times breaking down silos means better communicating between teams. And so that means better understanding of each other's goals. That doesn't mean that we have to share goals, but if I understand Jennifer's goals from the brand side, then I might put a different filter on what I'm doing on the direct marketing side, knowing how those things interact and interplay. Better understanding each other's strategies, better understanding each other's measurements, having regular meetings where you are intently sharing out what you're aiming for and how you did, so that you're showing your accountability, you're showing your successes, you're showing your failures. A lot of that creates a sense of vulnerability and buy-in that can help us get to a place of better integration. So, I was thinking about Nhu, your question, and thinking about, who said this better than me, and I wanted to pull in a quote from Booker T. Washington that said, if you want to lift yourself up, lift someone else up. And I think that that's at the core of us integrating better, is understanding each other better. Me understanding what's happening on the other side of the cubicle wall, or in the the case right now on the other side of the screen that I'm looking at of my teammate. That helps us in so many ways, but it also takes a tremendous amount of listening and reflecting and being helpful to understand expertise and align.
Yeah, for sure. Open lines of communication can go a really long way, especially in between different departments and different teams. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I really agree with everything that Justin said, and I think that he gave a really compelling argument for internal integration. So I guess what I would just add to that is one of the things that we're really looking at doing is also looking at external integration. And by that, I mean, we oftentimes look at things through the lens of our own internal structure. And how do we eliminate that mind space? How do we get ourselves out of that? Because most people, when they're making a donation or they're advocating or they're supporting your organization, they don't really care which bucket they fall into in your own structure. So how do we integrate around our supporters? So how do we think about who those supporters are and really create strong integration to deliver the best, most rewarding experience for every supporter who comes to save the children? So to me, and I think for our team, that's really our focal point. So when we think about some of the internal teams and silos, it starts to melt away when you're putting the lens is not on yourself internally, but thinking about who that supporter is and how you can be delivering for them.
Jennifer, I think that's the original intent of something that is taken in far too many directions now, which is the idea of the constituent journey or customer journey or CX or donor journey or whichever label we want to put on it. But I think that at its purest intent, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's that old picture of the Olympic torch going from city to city and being handed off, that actually each of our channels and teams is one part of handing that torch to get to that final destination of having someone make a contribution or deepen their commitment to the organization. That truly is teams, that you are in it together to accomplish that. And I think that you're so right in saying that. I also believe that too many times we consider it to be a donor instead of, as we talked about earlier, audiences, which are multiple people types. And those people all take different paths. And so that comes back to your comment about levers. It's not just saying, here's the singular linear path. Mm-hmm. It's an erratic path that many people take, and trying to aggregate and understand as many of those erratic paths as possible so that we can make it a good experience.
Such a great point. Awesome. All right, so I wanted to touch on our current climate with COVID-19. Obviously, with the pandemic that we're living in right now, fundraising strategies have changed. So traditional fundraising strategies, a lot of them aren't as applicable because we can't meet people face to face and host events. So Justin, you work with a lot of different nonprofit clients, and I'm curious with your opinion and your experience on how those organizations have kind of like altered their fundraising strategies during COVID-19.
You can think about the nonprofit landscape in maybe in two separate sections over the last handful of months, since March 11th or 12th or whatever you want to mark as the beginning of our current state. There's the first responders and the non-first responders, because the way that those two types, organization types, have pivoted are drastically different. And so that's one way to slice it. But overall, some truths that we've seen, I read a McKinsey report yesterday that cited that e-commerce had moved ahead 5 years in transformation in just 8 weeks. And I was really taken aback by that, if you think about how many iPhones we've been through in the last 5 years, that's the level of digital transformation and what people have become accustomed to in terms of being on their couches and shopping and ordering food or whatever it is. So there are some pre-pandemic trends that have accelerated, like digital. It was already heading that way, and it just accelerated because of it. Digital experiences is one of those. The use of media, digital media, has accelerated. The necessity of stewardship has accelerated tremendously, and very, very important. And so many organizations are increasing their stewardship efforts, and it becomes all hands on deck for phone calls from volunteers, and not saying thank you enough. So then there's this incredible new wave of virtual experiences that we have been forced to create, and maybe that's not as accelerated as pre-pandemic, but the experiences that we're seeing in the event space. We're no longer bound by geography, so you can create virtual events that extend well beyond the borders of a hotel ballroom and engage so many more loyal supporters. And I think that sort of transformation is powerful, and I'm hopeful that we continue to harness and transform at a rapid pace on elements like that in terms of the virtual nature. So those are a few things that come to mind, but I know that there's also face and the role that it has not played in the current environment. And so, there's still some uncertainties as to, we don't know exactly we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring in terms of the shifts that we need to make in our strategy. But those are some of the things that we've seen so far.
Nice. Jennifer, how has the strategy changed at Save the Children amidst the pandemic?
Well, interestingly enough, I would say that our strategy has not changed. I think our tactics have changed. So I feel like we found that we had a very clear strategy about how we were going to be more integrated as a team, what we were going to drive, how we were going to drive it. And in some ways, COVID accelerated that. And we got better at working that way because of COVID. And tactically, I think we tried to be more innovative. So it's not just, well, we can't do canvassing, so we're going to move our money here. We've looked at all different types of things, like different price points. How do we change our product offerings? Because we have obviously sponsorship and a recurring donation product, as well as other types of ways that you can engage with Save the Children. So we've looked at a whole host of different things. And I think, as Justin alluded to, being a first responder is critical. If it's okay, I'll share that we were able to get a new campaign out on March 16th that we launched, called Save with Stories, with our trustee, Jennifer Garner. And the campaign was having different celebrities read children's stories, and could make a donation through text to give or link to a web donation form. And one of the things that we found was that being out there, being first to go and talk about the challenges that kids in rural America were facing with school closures. 30 million kids rely on schools for meals in America. So giving folks an opportunity to help out those children, those families, and Save the Children communities with educational materials and food was great. We were so heartened by the response. But in addition to the funds that we raised, we had over 100 million eyeballs just on the campaign and media. So it really helped people think about Save the Children when they were thinking about COVID and the needs here in the US as well as internationally. And we were hoping and we saw that it did impact Save the Children's brand awareness, which improved by over 20%. So it really speaking of integration, Justin, when you can drive your brand awareness and raise funds at the same time, that's really what we're trying to do, as well as help kids,
That's amazing. Jennifer, I talked to Ettore. He's on your team from Save the Children, and he actually shared the initiative of Save with Stories, and I absolutely loved the concept, and I followed along the entire way. So I definitely congratulations. I think the results and the outcomes of that were amazing.
Yeah. One of the things that was so heartening for me too was to see so many other Save the Children countries also launch. So from the UK to South Korea to South Africa, India, Mexico, the Netherlands, Switzerland. So to see really a global campaign around, for kids with some of your favorite celebrities. And I have a 6-year-old, so she loves baby stories. And she actually doesn't realize they're celebrities. She thinks that they're all people that work with mommy at the office.
Oh. Mommy's so cool.
It's totally true.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, great. So, I mean, we're nearing the end of our time, but I like to ask my guests this very important, but it couldn't be difficult for some people. What's one piece of advice that you would give to nonprofits listening today? Jennifer, you can go ahead and get that kicked off.
I would say take your playbook, take your formulas, throw them out the window. And if you're sitting and waiting for things to return to normal, I think you're making a mistake. It's going to be a new normal. So the folks who are saying, well, we'll wait until canvassing resume, you got to be thinking, how do I innovate here? There's an opportunity. And so that's, I think, how do you build back stronger from this? And the new normal is really where you should be putting all of your strategic time, energy, investment.
Yeah, that's great advice because, I mean, quite frankly, I don't know if it's gonna ever go back to normal, and we have to be able to adjust and adapt to whatever the next chapter is for the world. Justin, how about you?
I love, Jennifer, what you said, because it's about not retreating, right? And it's about not pulling back, and it's about forging ahead. And I would say buckle up. Now, I don't mean buckle up like passively, just buckle up and kind of wait for something to happen. But I mean, it's not going to be a smooth ride ahead. We're forging new territory, we're transforming, and so sometimes that's bumpy. So I think buckling up for me means taking a cautious, thoughtful approach. And, I would say that the way that nonprofits can best do that is create localized experiences as best as possible. Create localized experiences. Make everything you can as personal as you can, because that's what's helping connect with people right now. Track and analyze, and then say thank you again and again and again and again.
I love that. Yeah, and I love your picture of buckling up because, you're not protecting yourself. We got to go. You got to make moves, if you want to continue to stay successful and, drive growth for the mission, the ultimate goal. Well, awesome. You guys have been so wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. We're just about out of time, which makes me a little sad, but it is what it is. So, I mean, Jennifer, Justin, it's been so much fun. Thank you again for joining me on the Nonprofit Voice and talking about multi-channel fundraising.
Thank you, Nhu. I'm really grateful for being included. And Justin, it was great to meet you.
Yeah, Jennifer, you're the same. Nhu, thanks for having us. We look forward to catching up later.
And on behalf of Nonprofit Pro, we'll see you on the next episode of the Nonprofit Voice. Have a great day.